Okay. Go
All
ahead.
right, how's everyone doing today? My name is Wrobel. I have been in the school since 2008, fall. I started off right out of high school, and I was asked to talk to you guys today about career paths, and the instructors just wanted me to kind of give you insight as to how to go about getting internships and jobs, and basically the whole process from start to beginning. I feel this information is good for you guys, and I think they did too, because you get an insight as to where you're going to be headed to in your education. You know, ultimately, you guys are not in school because you necessarily want to be for the school. You want to get a job one day. You know, you want to be able to support yourselves and have a family and make a decent income. And this is basically kind of showing you guys how you get from stage one all the way to that point. So today we're going to talk about a couple things here. And we're going to cover basically how to prepare yourself for the professional world. You know, from the start of you actually being in school to beginning your career and your internships and getting experience as well as your education. We're also going to discuss using resources to apply for jobs and internships. We're going to talk about how you should prepare yourself for that in terms of your materials, your experience. Then we're going to talk about gathering your career materials. And that includes creating and maintaining a resume. That also includes cover letters, getting job references, getting contacts throughout your career. And then we're going to prepare for and conduct your interview. So this is kind of going to be the biggest part of the whole presentation. When you get yourself ready to the point where, all right, I'm ready to get some work that's relative to my field instead of just getting a normal job to get some money in your pocket, you ultimately want to get some jobs that are related to your field prior to you graduating. And those professional internships, may they be paid or unpaid, are going to be the reason why you usually get the job you're going to start off with. Then basically we're going to talk about negotiation of salary and your position, how to go about doing all that stuff so you guys are a little bit more aware. It's not really something that's touched upon too much, so hopefully I can give you guys some personal experience that will make it a little bit more clearer for you and you have a little bit more ease when you approach that. And then we're going to reflect on your experience based on what you guys did in terms of your school, each job interview you had, and what you learned along the way. So we're going to talk about preparing yourself for the job first. So a couple things we're going to do here is when you're preparing for a job, you might not realize it, but you're actually doing it right now. The reason I say that is because you're in a classroom, you know, you understand what authority is. When you have a professor, you have deadlines to meet, and you're hopefully getting that rigor every day you come into class. You know, sometimes it's not really seen like that from your perspective. I remember when I was in your position, I never thought that this was going to be something that I'm going to be using. When I came to class, you know, it was basically just I wanted to get a good grade. I wanted to do my time from 8 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock, go home, and, you know, do whatever I wanted to do. Was it going out with friends or was it, you know, hanging out at the house? You realize now, though, that every class you take, no matter how insignificant or maybe how inappropriate it may seem for your personal career goals, it does have some kind of impact. And you have to kind of realize that these classes, maybe you'll never touch what you're learning here. Maybe, you know, you're learning about microprocessors, or maybe you're learning about circuitry in Gaussian's class. That all may be something that gives you background, but you necessarily will never touch it. That doesn't mean that you should dismiss it, though. A lot of times, you'll find out that you'll go for a job interview, and they'll tell you, do you have any experience analyzing complex circuits? Maybe you don't like doing that, but then you look back at your semesters, and you had 8 semesters worth of classes that you probably did some work regarding that matter. Maybe it was a little bit, maybe it was a lot. But that still builds your skill set, and that could be the difference why you get the job or you don't. When you prepare yourself for a job, a very important thing to do is make sure that you realize what you're comfortable doing. And by that I mean travel, overtime, managing, or dealing with people. Those are just some examples. But when you go to a job, you also want to realize, okay, why am I applying for this job? Am I doing this for a career or a job? The difference between the two is a career is something that actually lets you involve your own skills and expand them as time goes on. A job is basically something that you aim for just to get a paycheck, and you consider yourself to be there strictly to provide for yourself. the goal here is when you leave, you want a career. You want to be able to learn. So when you start your first job in 10 years, when you're about 30, hopefully, if you started off, out of high school, obviously, that's when you want to kind of say to yourself, did I start off and did I learn and advance myself from where I first began? That's the whole goal, is basically your first job. I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but your GPA is basically looked at almost exclusively for your first job. After you get that, you'll see a lot of engineering jobs are almost predominantly based on your job experience. A lot of jobs today, if you go, and we'll take a look at this later on, you look at your professors and anything that you apply for, you're going to see that the minimum experience. They're not going to say we require 3.0. We're not going to say that they require you to have classes in so-and-so. They're going to say must be proficient in, and usually they'll drop keywords like minimum 5 years, 10 years experience. That's what the job out of school is going to prepare you for. You're not obviously going to get a job like that out of school, like just starting off, but it's going to give you the opportunity to prepare yourself for that job. The one thing that you have to realize is when you get your first job opportunity, you might be a little overwhelmed. You might think that, these people expect me to know, all these different skills. I don't know necessarily if they know how little I know. The fact that you got the job and the fact that they came out to you, they know, they saw your resume, they saw that you're just finishing your degree, and they expect that from you. They want to make you learn, and they want to give you the opportunity to better yourself. So basically, one way to ensure that for yourself is the last point on here: keep a current resume. And what I mean is, I don't know if you guys have considered that yet. Maybe you have some, maybe you've been taught to start looking into it. The biggest point I could get across to you guys today about resumes is that you should start to have a rough template as soon as possible. The reason I say that is a resume is almost like, basically like a progress log for yourself. And during my career here, I've been here for a couple of years, and basically during that time, you learn so much, but you don't realize what you actually did unless you have a track record of it. And I'll give you an example. After it came time to start looking for job interviews and looking at places I might want to work, I started making myself a resume. And this was toward my junior year. Well, in my first 3 years, I learned a lot of stuff, but I forgot in that semester that I did specific tasks. For example, I don't know if you guys have taken digital classes yet with Mr. Smith, but you do take some stuff with truth tables. A lot of companies like the fact that you can read documents, you can read schematics, you can understand process flow charts. And even though I do, I never mention that on a resume. Well, that could be the difference why someone's going to give you a little bit more of a hard time asking you, do you understand logic tables? Do you understand truth tables? Well, of course I do, but if I had that on my resume at the time, if I look back at the end of each semester and said, what did I do? Even as simple as looking at your course syllabus and saying, okay, so in this semester, in this class, we did X, Y, and Z. If you have the space on your resume, why not put it on there? It's going to be one more thing that the person can look at and say, this guy's marketable. This guy can give me something that can give me a return investment on his hiring. Couple quick notes. I'm sorry if some of this stuff seems a little bit redundant or maybe a little obvious, but a lot of times, and this I can say this for myself and I can say this for people that I know, my friends, you really want to make sure that before you even start looking for jobs and you get your name out there in terms of a resume or applications, you always have your wits about you in terms of your own social networking. People have not gotten jobs before because of Facebook, and I've been told this before, and I always thought this is just a bunch of BS. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. And then little do you know, you have a post on Instagram, or you have a post on Twitter or Facebook, and they somehow find you, even though you think that your thing is private and they cannot access it. That could be the reason where someone stumbles upon and Googles your name and says, wait a minute, why is this guy doing this and acting like a different person than what we think he's supposed to be? That, the best advice I can give you is if you know that there's something on there that you can change it. If you know that you don't need it anymore, or it's too much work to change it, just get rid of it. For the time being at least, it's going to be something that you might not even know. You might not get the job and they will never call you back, or they might just say we're not interested. And they won't tell you it's because we saw a picture of you drinking, or it's a picture of, you made a post saying something that didn't agree with our views on politics or whatever. Something as simple as that can really be the reason why you don't get that job that you wanted so bad. Another thing about that is your email, voicemail, and cell phone tones. My friend didn't get a job because his email was like, I hate computers at gmail.com. And either that ends up in a spam box or that ends up telling them, why is this guy's email or contact information so relaxed? It should be a little bit more professional. Something as like your last name, first name, and a number is fine. You don't want anything that's going to be a little offensive, because the people that are contacting you are going to contact a lot of people. And you don't know if this person's a stickler, if he's a very strictly business kind of guy, if this is an HR guy who just is dealing with hundreds of applications a day. Imagine you calling someone, and I'm sure it gets annoying when you guys hear a ringback tone and it's some heavy metal song screaming in the background and you're trying to talk to someone for a job interview. It might not exactly come off as too professional. The same thing with voicemail. I had a lot of times, we were talking about this, I'm sure you guys all had experience, where you had people come up to you and like when you call them, they're like, hello, and you're talking on the phone like, oh, hey, are you there? And it's actually just like a fake voicemail that's trying to trip you up. And that kind of stuff can be the reason why you don't get the job. And then lastly, when you make a resume, you want to have references. And we're going to go into that a little bit more specifically later on. But what I mean with that is every time you have a resume, you have a list of 3 to 5 numbers, and contact information of people that you will allow the employer to contact if they wish to basically give you a good word. So for example, if I had Dr. Rankinen as my interview reference, I would have his name, his relationship to me, his email and phone number. So if they say, all right, well, we like what we see, but I kind of want to see what someone else that knows him wants to say about this. And then they would go in and speak to Dr. Rankinen and say, hey, listen, we have Lester here. We want to know if he's a good fit for this. Can you tell us something about him? And by law, they're not supposed to say anything bad, but you're never going to know about it. So you want to make sure that the people that you contact and you have as references are going to be able to give you a good name for yourself, and make sure that whatever you tell these guys is actually what they're going to say. If you want to say something like, this guy's my boss, but he's not really your boss, well, make sure that when they tell the guy, he really knows that he's your boss. That kind of stuff is going to be the difference between a yes or a no. Okay, so also, now that we're going to go to the application process, I don't know if you guys have any of these things. It's LinkedIn, Monster, and internships.com are 3 very, very good resources for you to find jobs. We'll go into that and look at these websites later on when we get to the resume portion. But basically, if you guys are looking for jobs, you can always find things through career services. Instructors are always a great help for that. But if you're looking if this doesn't really cut it for you, if you're looking for something a little bit different, maybe closer to home if you're not from the area, these are really, really good websites to get you started along that path. Monster and LinkedIn are very good for finding jobs. LinkedIn is almost like a professional Facebook. For those of you who don't know, you make your own profile, and what's nice about it is you can actually add your own skills to that. So for example, if you like programming, or you're good at circuit design, or PCB board layouts, you actually select these skills off of a checklist, and then people that worked with you in the past can come into your profile and endorse you for those skills. So they can say, for example, Mike is a really good programmer in PLCs, and they can actually analyze that for you. They can say, I worked with Mike, he was a PLC programmer on a project I had, and he did phenomenal work. And people see that, they're going to give you more, it's almost like a running resume, and it gives you a little bit more insight as to who the person is that you're working with. It helps you establish a network of professional basis, maybe build some references, and it gives you an idea of what you've been doing along the way if you forget. Monster is the go-to job website. You look for jobs on there. It's a little bit more for professional, once you get out of school, that's when you want to go to monster.com. And internships.com is really good for sophomore and junior level. You type in basically where you're from, you look at internships in the area being offered that meet your criteria, and then you're going to have people sending you stuff to your inbox about different kinds of positions. And the great thing about that is they know what they're there for. They're not going to get someone that's like a genius in the subject or very skilled. He's an intern. So they give you the opportunity to grow yourself, and maybe you get a job on there from internships, and in 5 years it becomes your career. So that's kind of nice as well. And lastly, I mentioned this before, your professors and colleagues are your resources as well. Mr. Calvert, I don't know if you guys have had time to get to know him. He's very, very passionate about his students. It may not come across as that all the time, but he's the kind of person that really, truly does care about your well-being, and he doesn't really want you to feel like you're in trouble. He wants you to know that his main goal at the end of the day is to put you through this program and get you a job. That's what his main goal is. You don't have to come out of here with a decent GPA. You don't have to be the smartest guy in a particular field. If you know where you're going, you have a direction, he's going to work with you. He wants to see you succeed. If you care about yourself, then he's going to show you the same respect that you gave him. And the same goes for all the other instructors. Like at the end of the day, they're not here to be hard on you or to give you a hard time. Because I thought the same thing. When I came to the school, I was very intimidated by the professors. I thought that they were all just going to make my life here difficult. But in reality, what they do for you really does prepare you for what to expect in the real world. And I can give you an example. I don't know, do you guys have Mr. West for anything, maybe? Mr. Calvert for any classes? Do you guys have lab evaluations yet for any like circuitry or anything? When the professor comes to you and he gives you a lab assignment, okay, he maybe gives it to you on Monday, and then on Thursday, Friday, or next week, he's going to come and evaluate you. Well, that's almost like a very scaled down version of a job interview. You have a task to do, and your goal is to present the entire thing to them, and basically say, listen, I did the lab, and I know what's going on. Not just that I did it, and it's under the table now. It's been done, and you can ask me any question you want, and I will give you an answer to convey my understanding of the subject. And sometimes you're going to get different people. You're going to have different instructors. Some instructors are very relaxed about it. Some of them are very, very stern, and they're very detail-oriented. It's not because they want to be, they want to make your life, a problem. It's because they really want to have you understand what's going on. And it takes a while to understand that. A lot of times I would come home and I would be so furious that I can't believe that they gave me such a hard time about that. It was a very stupid little thing. But in reality, that could be the difference why you get a job or someone believes that you know the skills or you don't. So now we're going to talk about gathering your career materials. You will talk a lot about this when you guys get to your last semesters here. I would say about your last year here, last 2 semesters probably will be the best way for you to start understanding this in terms of what these really mean. I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight so you have a little bit of a head start if you wish to take it. A cover letter basically is the first thing you send to someone if they request it. It's usually common practice and shows professionalism if you have it. A cover letter is nothing more than a 3-paragraph letter, very simple, that goes to the guy who's hiring or the HR department and says, I'm applying for this job. I read about it or I got the interest of the job position here. Why you're qualified and you're asking for the interview. And this is usually given to the people at the same time as your resume. I haven't really done a lot of cover letters personally. It's one of those things where people can ask for it. You can provide it if you want. It does show a lot of insight if you have it. It basically is a little bit more personal, not just you handing off a resume that you give to everybody else. It tells them that I specifically researched your company and I would like to work for you, and these are the reasons why. Then you have your resume. And your resume, very simply, is just your contact information, your work experience, your job experience, and then a breakdown of your specific skills. I'll bring up mine here pretty soon, and you guys are going to be able to see what a template looks like, and some do's and do nots that follow for what you should know and what you should not do on a resume, like to basically optimize your chances of getting the job. Also, the last thing that you will definitely be needing is a portfolio of your work experience. A lot of people forget this part. And I think that the biggest reason you need this, and this is almost always exclusively for the physical face-to-face job interview. The portfolio is basically like a working collection of the best work that you've done. If you do really well on a lab assignment, if you do some kind of project that you're proud of and you know that it was done well and it shows that you stand out, that's what deserves the place in that portfolio. You basically put in, like for example, when you have senior projects coming up or you have open house projects, if you have a final project for a class, make sure that you save everything you do for that. Maybe it's going to be something that you think is going to be not useful in the future. Not only is it going to be probably accessible to you for future classes, and you're going to learn that later on, when you're in this major, you want to save everything you do. Every single thing, even if it's from first year, even if it's from when you do microprocessors and programming in the lower level logic, you definitely want to have a hard drive or something, your H drive that has backups of your work because you're going to go back to it. And it also serves for help in your work experience. If you apply for a job and say, down the road they're going to ask you, yeah, do you have any schematics that you drew up? And maybe you did tons of them in the first 2 years, but then later on, not so much. At least you have that to have in your portfolio. They can see that you have organization, that you're very consistent with your documentation, and you look like a very organized person. That goes a long way in this field. Okay, now conducting and preparing your interview. Basically, when you go for the interview, okay, let's just backtrack for a second. When you have a resume, okay, the way this typically works is your resume is not what gets you the job. People seem to confuse that a lot. The resume is basically getting you the interview. So when you get your job, okay, and you find the place that you want to work, preparing yourself is exactly where everything kind of starts to break down and has to be personalized. When you start to apply for the job, make sure that you're mentally prepared for it, and that means that you know exactly what you're looking into. You're not going in there blind, and you have a very good understanding of what they're asking you to do. If you go into a job interview and you say, okay, I'm here, you saw my resume, so what's the problem? That's not really going to go too well. You have to make sure that you convey yourself to them saying, I read up on the company, and just a little bit of history, and showing them that you're interested in their business. If you're going to give them your time, they want to make sure that this kid's not just, we're not just some other pile of interviews that he's going to go to. He wants to work here. He likes what he sees. You're prepared and you're confident. Like if you apply for a job, you always want to make sure that you can handle it just based on looking at it. If you see something on the requirements of a job and you start to get shaky, like, I don't know if this is the place for you, that's probably a bad sign. You don't want to go in there because, then you're wasting their time and you're wasting your own. Usually you have a pretty good idea just based on the breakdown, and we can see that, I'll show you guys that on monster.com. When you Google, when you search for a job, you'll see very simply the title of the job, what the job requirements are, and what your daily responsibilities are going to be. You look at those things and you have a pretty good idea. Okay, I like doing this. I don't like doing this. I'm okay at this. This job seems good or bad to me. If you can't say that comfortably, just move along. Because at the end of the day, the time that you're wasting trying to prepare for this job that you're not qualified for is just wasting time for other jobs that you're probably going to be good at. Your physique also, when you go to an interview, it seems very, very common sense oriented to just look good for it. Make sure that you're clean, that you have proper attire, and that you physically are ready for this. That you're not tired, you're not questioning yourself. You're confident, you're ready to go, just like you would when you're doing anything else for school. You don't want to go into a presentation and you don't want to look like you're shy or you're not confident in yourself. If these people are going to invest their time and money in you, they want to make sure that this guy can handle responsibility.